Catching up with Sarah and Ginny, fueled by laughter and insights aplenty. Curiosity, connection, and learning that sticks. Real talk, real lives with practical tips. Welcome to Catching Up with Sarah and Ginny. Come on in.
Have you got a wow moment that you'd like to share? It can be recent, it can be something just that's kind of made you stop and think, or anything you like really that you want to share.
Yes, I've definitely got one which was just about a couple of weeks or so ago, and it relates to the reading that is my life's work, sharing this. And so it's a school, part of a multi-academy trust, where I've spoken at a conference in June 2024 to the whole trust. It's a large trust up in the Northwest. And this executive principal and her deputy heard me talk about the impact of the faster read in secondary and some headlines of what happens in primary. And they immediately started researching it. And then at the start of the autumn term, they implemented the faster read, the just read at across the whole of Key Stage 2, including Year 6. Quite edgy, include something in Year 6. And what they found when I went to see them a couple of weeks or so ago, and I visited all the lessons, oh my goodness, spine-chillingly magical. Couldn't tell which child might have had additional needs, which child might have struggled to, sit still. And so they were just all completely engrossed across Year 3, Year 4, Year 5, and Year 6. And we can say, oh, that's all very nice and cuddly, Mary, but actually the proof of the pudding is always in the outcomes. And one of those classes in Year 6 that had trialled this last year, 46% greater depth in their reading.
Wow.
So you can't really quarrel with that. So that was just fantastic. And just seeing the utter absorption of those young people across Key Stage 2 was a deep wow for me.
And that's wonderful. And I think it is, that whole Key Stage 2, particularly those, the Year 5, 6, it's kind of a little bit forgotten at times. And it's wonderful to see that importance of making sure they're included and there is that richness. I love that, Mary. That's wonderful. Thank you.
And it is that fizz, isn't it? When you see something happening, and actually from the point of view, Mary, I think the fact that you'd spoken about it and then someone had taken it on further and embedded it, because we can hear somebody talk at a conference or somebody can come in and then life can take over. But for them to actually fully take it on board, embed it, and then for you to go back in, that is a wow moment, isn't it? Because it has made such an impact to so many. One of my colleagues said, we always need to look at kind of what impact things are making. And so to see that as a cycle is, well, it's just brilliant, isn't it?
Yeah, and it was a lovely piece of serendipity that actually I went to visit the school, because I have my week set aside where I do school visits just to go poke around and see interesting stuff and, have a chat with people. And I hadn't actually planned to go to this school. I'd already got the others mapped out. But I was at the Racial Equality Network dinner in Leeds a couple of months or so ago. These two colleagues came bouncing up at the end. They said, "You'd never guess what. We took on board what you said, and we just want to share it with you." Well, as you can imagine, my heart was singing. And so I made a point of actually visiting them as I was visiting the other schools as well. So it was just neat the way life sort of threw us together at this lovely, lovely dinner in Leeds a few months or so ago. It was hilarious.
And it is that wonder of seeing it in action, seeing the things happening. And it is that kind of, people say to me, well, where do we begin? What do we do to make a difference? Ginny and I talk a lot about kind of, we've been looking at invisible inclusion and kind of, as you said, you can't see any of those learners that maybe have got those more additional needs. And actually it's that whole thing around making learning irresistible. And people are like, where do we start? What do we do? Let's make it fun. Let's get that curiosity. Let's get them enjoying whatever it is that you're enjoying as well. Wonderful. Thank you, Mary.
I think also it's the idea of connection, isn't it? And I love the fact that people kind of tiggered up to you. They bounced up to you because they had to tell you. And isn't that wonderful that you have that connection with the people who you've spoken with, that they need to tell you. I love that as well. And Sarah and I also talk so much about connection and about how siloed we can be in education. And actually, someone knows that you will be so interested in what they've implemented. So no, it's is great. And it's what I call that yum time, Mary. It's when we go into a classroom or we go into a school and we become re-energized, don't we? And that is a word, re-energization, is so important, because it kind of keeps our cup full, doesn't it?
Yeah, and I think we've also got an obligation to share that when we see it. So I did blog about it. I didn't mention the school, and there was other great work that I'd seen. And also we put in a submission for the Festival of Education for them to come and talk about it. So it's just really important. Good, this stuff is going well. The rest of the world needs to know.
The kind of the formal acknowledgement of co-occurrence is really important. There's the most wonderful diagram by Mary Colley and someone else whose name escapes me. And if you Google like Mary Colley neurodiversity diagram, you get like a Venn diagram thing. And it kind of, where it in the middle it's got executive function, and then around the edge is all the different flavors of neurodiversity. And I think it's possibly one of the most helpful diagrams. For me, it kind of showcases, it aligns with that diagram quite nicely. I don't know when Mary Colley's diagram was published. I really don't know, but it's like my best friend in diagram form, because it's so helpful. So yeah, I think.
No, that's really good. So and it's really useful as well, because people are kind of, they get a bit concerned when things change and something new comes out, and it's like, well, what's that gonna kind of like create on anything? So next question is, you said, music, your head kind of things go into song. If Send were a song, what song would you choose?
Oh, I actually, for whatever reason, I speak French and I like French music. I try and, if I'm listening to music with words, when I'm writing, if it's words I follow, then I end up writing the words. So I tend to put like different language music on. The problem is I speak really good French, so then I learn the words and then I can't actually listen to really while I'm working. But I've discovered a singer called Indila, and the song that I first heard was Dernier Danse, like Last Dance, which is just gorgeous. And then like YouTube makes playlists, and there's a song called SOS, and it's just like, that's where I think we are with SEN, man. It's not ideal, is it? Let's use a bit of understatement, because that's the politest I can be. It's just a bit, I don't want to insult my dog's food by calling it a dog's dinner. They're on the sofa, they might get upset. Too many cooks, broths being spoilt. It becomes a political punch bag.
And lots of reviews. So we'll just have that review. We'll just do another review of the review that we're doing.
Oh, well, in 2011, they ran the Pathfinder schemes of the 2014 Children and Families Act. In 2013, the evaluation came back saying they weren't very happy. Families thought it was a bit of a chocolate fire guard. So I will do it anyway. I mean, really? Really?
Yeah, that's a good one. Thinking about your wow moment then, Helen.
My wow moment of the week.
Yeah.
Got an article come through, it's being published. It was quite a quick, kind, constructive, brutal but kind. Like it was like it was so bang on the money. But it's coming out shortly in Education 3 to 13, which is a journal that I kind of became introduced to through my gorgeous, amazing colleagues at Liverpool John Moores and Manchester Met, Elizabeth Malone, Peter Wood. Big them up, they're just awesome. So we've worked on a project that's coming out.
Brilliant.
I've had a couple of people actually have given me really kind feedback about book bits. So because you said my chapter wasn't rubbish, didn't you?
Absolutely not rubbish at all. Chapter's fantastic.
Thank you.
Looking great. The book is coming together well.
And then, so I wrote that bit for you guys. And then I've written some stuff, because I don't quite know how it's going to look when it comes out for Georgina Durrant. And there was one bit of feedback, like, could I rewrite a definition of dyslexia? But the reason I had to do that was because the new definition came out. So, like, that wasn't because what I wrote was rubbish. It was just because, well, if a whole new framework comes out, you kind of have to address that in a book. So that's really cool, because writing, I love writing, but you put your heart and soul into it, and then you're like, what are they going to say? So to have nice feedback as a bit of a spanner with dyslexia is really, really nice.
The two that have kind of had a in some ways a profound effect. One is Poor by Catriona O'Sullivan, which is a great text around what it feels like to go through that journey of not feeling included, and then finding people that believe in you, and going kind of finding the places where you do or you don't belong, and then finding the people that believe in you enough so that you matter, and you actually have some significance to some people at a time where perhaps it didn't feel that you mattered at various other points in your life to various individuals. And I've probably not done it justice in terms of in terms of the story, which is kind of really powerful in terms of how it's written and comes across as a narrative. But what it did enable me to do was really kind of take the kind of my sense of what that meant, and apply it to the work that I do now. If how do we include, how do we kind of see people, and make sure that we're doing the things that matter for them, that we make people feel like they're significant and can make a contribution and are seen and are heard, and are needed, and and sometimes in our most vulnerable people, we need to do that most. And that probably leads into the kind of third element, where I've kind of got, I go down these rabbit holes and and find myself in there, which is the art of mattering. The Power of Mattering by Zach Mercurio, and that kind of brings together the sense of the threads of those things. One is kind of a story, and the other one's kind of a social construct narrative, I think, leadership around how you can kind of create that sense of significance in people, and so I think a combination of those things have kind of really challenged my thinking, from as I said at the start, the experience and the lens that you arrive in a particular spot based on the experiences you've had, don't they, in order to get to that spot. And in lots of ways, I've had lots of privilege in my life, and so on and so forth. And so you need to have those challenges to be able to kind of be able to be to at least acknowledge, and kind of understand people. And I think that I've really started to listen a lot more. And actually, if I can just interrupt myself to come back to this, is I found that when I became a Senko as well. Actually, I became a Senko after I became a head. And so I'd done my head here and became a Senko afterwards. And again, that was like a really important, interesting, and I just wish that I'd done it sooner. And then I don't know how the structures work, but I think that school leaders, if you can become a Senko, it would help the system, but also like the lens that you get into, and the conversations around kind of family and those sorts of things are kind of so important.
I'm going to go Shel Silverstein, poet, songwriter. It's probably most famous for his work with Johnny Cash. He wrote Boy Named Sue. I'm going real old school.
I'm loving it.
One of the three reasons why I originally shaved my head is, fourth reasons, because my hair was awful, which is the main reason. Well, I thought, well, if Shel Silverstein can get away with a bald head and a beard, I can. And he was a non-practicing Jew, I believe. He might have been practicing. I don't think he was practicing. And had a friend of his who was a reverend minister, and would invite different guest speakers in to who are non-Christian, to discuss their view of what Christ was or means.
Yeah.
And Shel Silverstein's response was a book called The Giving Tree.
Oh yes.
Which is gut-wrenchingly beautiful. And essentially, it's about a tree that the baby and then the young child plays on, and eventually, as the boy grows to be an old man, the tree shrinks from a fully blossomed apple tree all the way down to a stump. And it's about meeting a person at their point of need and giving everything that you can. And I come from a family of truckers,
Yeah.
of railway workers, of longshoremen and women, so transport workers
Yeah.
and teachers. And it is my fervent belief as to work with children and
Yeah.
to be in any way connected with education is a holy thing, is a sacred thing. It's a vocation,
Yeah.
it's a calling, and it's to give of oneself with asking nothing in return quite
Yeah.
often.
Yeah.
It's like sending, a DVD out into space for alien civilizations. Sometimes you never
Love
know if
I
that
love that.
message lands.
Yeah.
And I am not religious, and I mean, I am reasonably well versed in the Judeo-Christian mythology, but I'm not religious. Although I was raised in a born-again fundamentalist cult, but that's another podcast. The beauty of that is, again, is working with staff.
Yeah.
Is that
Yeah.
there's no, you're not, and we are a restorative trust. There's no wins in
Nope.
this. The wins are when we make a breakthrough with the child. When a child that can't regulate,
Yeah.
co-regulate it. When a child who doesn't understand fractions finally understands that 1/2 means something, and you can't go into this business if it's about you.
Oh, I
Yes,
love
of course,
that.
it's about you being fulfilled
Yeah.
by it, but by nature to work with
Yeah.
anybody vulnerable, and children are vulnerable regardless of age, stage,
Yeah.
ability. To do that sort of work is to give of one selflessly,
Yeah.
time, effort, energy, expertise, and to do it right is to expect nothing back, to learn from when you don't get anything back,
Yeah.
and from those mistakes, and to celebrate when the child or the colleague makes that step, as opposed to it being about itself. And
Yeah.
so I'm going to actually make a phone call to someone today and ask a favor. And she once said, "You are the most Christian, non-Christian
Christian.
leader of a school I've ever seen." And I
Brilliant.
said, it's because of the Giving Tree.
Yeah.
It's because of that book.
Fabulous.
In terms of
Yeah.
this. Why do we do it?
Yep.
We do it because we do it for the right reason, at
Yep.
the right time, for the right outcome.
Yep.
Not for any sort of
Any
payback.
payback.
or-
Any
or
payback is all.
whatnot,
Yeah.
Because then that
Yeah.
becomes the Brucey bonus.
Payback. You get
And
something.
it happened today. A former student of mine I ran into, haven't seen in years, and just said, "You remember that assembly?" Now,
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
old,
That's
and I
that's it.
played combat sports for a long time. I do not remember that assembly. She does. She took something away from me.
Wow.
And
How
that's
wonderful.
why we all get up in the
Yeah.
morning and put the boots on
Yeah.
and get going, is to make that difference. And I think my concern about systems of education is that the pressures inherent in the English system sometimes
Takes it
makes
away.
us forget that.
Makes it
and-
hard.
There is value. There is a holy thing to give of oneself
Yeah.
with no expectation of anything
Yeah.
at the time. And
Yeah.
education is the way I've chosen to do that.
So I'm the founder and currently CEO of Independent Thinking. So that's a company I set up whilst I was teaching in Northampton. Even my NQT year, my not quite a teacher year, as I used to be called, I was doing all these extracurricular classes around thinking skills and philosophy for children and mind mapping and learning and motivation stuff. The reason I was there as a French teacher, but I went into teaching because I wanted to work with kids' brains in that sort of way. That was the purpose. And then I met a colleague in the staff room, Sue Chamberlain, whose husband Paul, they lived just outside Northampton. They had some money to invest. He'd sold his business, engineering business. And they said, "We like your ideas. We think that it's viable as a company. We'd like to lend you £20,000 to set up as a company." And I never really thought of it in that way. And it was like, it's one of these decisions where you have to do what's called the deathbed test or the rocking chair test, where you go to the end of your life and look back and think, do I wish I'd have taken it, yes or no, regardless of whether it worked out or not? Do I wish I'd have said yes or no? And it had to be a yes, regardless of what had happened. And I had, my son, Will, was about 5 at the time. I had another, Olivia, another was on the way. So it was a big risk, but the £20,000 helped because then it just gave a little bit of a cushion. I did supply teaching. I worked in Harbour District Council doing PR for a while there. So it helped launch what was then independent thinking, and Sue and Paul were shareholders, as my wife was at the time. I didn't really know what it was, but it was primarily to work with young people around the motivation and the thinking and the philosophy stuff. And then head teachers who got me into work with their students were saying, that stuff you did can you come and do it with the staff? So it was like, yeah, no, I haven't been teaching that long, but it was like, yeah, okay, go for it. I remember one of the first inset sessions I did was at what was then Kettering School for Girls. I'm not sure, it's probably got a different name now, with some academy. And at lunchtime, I was chatting to one of the teachers, a young guy, and he was saying, don't apologize. You know stuff that we need to know. So just go for it. And it sort of gave me the confidence that, yeah, I know stuff. I can do stuff. I still get nervous doing inset. It's still something that petrifies me, but I've done a lot of it over the years. And then I got involved in a project across Northamptonshire where they were looking at introducing sort of alternative ways of thinking into pedagogy, and also sort of trying to light the blue touch paper on thinking skills, especially around philosophy for children. So I ended up going into practically every school in Northamptonshire, primary, secondary, infant, special, all sort of the Peru in Corby, just working with staff, working with students on helping them just think differently about education. That's where things like my thunks came from, which grew out of the philosophy for children work. The thunks are questions like, is a broken down car parked, or is a pregnant woman two people, or do flags divide more than they unite? That's one that's on my mind at the moment when I come back. So independent thinking sort of grew out of that. And for a while, for about 6 months, I employed people, but then it was like, no, I don't like that. When you employ people, you end up with all their problems, and I had problems of my own. So what it turned into was sort of organically was this network of associates who were just doing fantastic stuff in education. And they might be school leaders, they might be teachers, they might have a specific expertise, they might be Sencoats, but just people whose values are in keeping with independent thinking's values, which is about integrity and creativity and passion and putting the child at the centre. And we're just a platform by which these people can spread the word, if you like. And then through the books, the association with Crown House meant that the Independent Thinking Press books are out there, which has been a real privilege to be able to have our voice in print, as well as to be able to stand on stages around the world at conferences, doing training. And then, especially since COVID, online in this sort of format, to be able to get across our integrity, energy, passion, creativity, but in this sort of two-dimensional format as well, that's been quite a privilege too.
All about the relational approach. And I think I had it in me, like I'd like to think most teachers do, but it just made me think about, the consistency in our relationships between adults and the children, adults and adults. But things like, as head teacher, you'd often get children brought to you, they need a bit of a telling off, and I'd shout at them. And looking back, I can't think of a time that it ever worked. And I'm kind of just putting it out there that I'm not proud of it, but I reckon most of us done it at times. It just doesn't get us anywhere. And I think I just remember reading it. It's a pretty easy read, pretty quick read, but I remember having quite a profound impact on me. I bought staff, every member of staff one, TAs and teachers, and they all had to read it. And, we've done quite a lot of work based on that. And I think when I talk about it being the best start back in 10 years, I do think part of that is the relational approach that we've introduced in school. That was my easy choice, to be honest, in terms of school.
It's the book, you read it and you go, oh yeah, why didn't I do that before? Isn't it? It is that, and I
think it just brings a bit of clarity to your thinking. It just provokes a bit of thinking.
And I think this idea of relational connections is so important, because when I started teaching, I remember if a child, in inverted commas, misbehaved in the classroom, they were sent out, and they had to, looking back on it, Dave, I don't know what this was all about, then they had to sit outside either the head teacher's office or the staff room. And actually, thinking about it, everyone would go past Brian or Bethany and say, why are you out here? And actually, they did get that connection because everyone was having a chat with them as they went past. But there was also this, you've got to go to the head, and they were passed to the head. Whereas this idea of it being that the class teacher has that conversation with the child and they reconnect and they understand one another as well. It is so important, isn't it? That the class teacher and the teacher keep that relationship, and when it goes a bit kind of awry, that they can build it back up again.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, I think this being sent to someone, is not actually supporting the relationship in the classroom. It's kind of dividing, isn't it?
Yeah. It's just now when you see the amount of work that we've done on it to see it playing out in school, just interesting. I thought about that at a time where there's lots of conversations about silent corridors and, that kind of thing. I think there's an answer that's somewhere in between, yeah. I think it just provokes a lot of thinking.
Yes. And I think anything that provokes our thinking is worth giving our time to, isn't it? It's just always.
Absolutely.
And there is
100%.
another way.
Totally.
And I think also consistency. Paul Dix does also talk about the consistency. When we have consistency, that gives children a feeling of safety, doesn't it? And trust. Is when we have the inconsistency that things become very, very confusing for children.
I think the consistency is essential, and you realise that staff can spend such a long time building up that relationship, that trust, and and then all of a sudden it just goes wrong in that one moment of stress or pressure and a snap or a shout or something like that. Yeah, honestly, it's been really profound in school.
Annamarie, what about if Send were a song? What song would you choose and why, please?
This is really hard because I would say about Send, it will be Don't Step on My Blue Suede Shoes, because there's a lot of segregation and separation and don't get in my territory. And that's not a contender for the song competition, because I don't want that to prevail.
Yes.
And we need to be much more collaborative. So the song I really want to talk about is it's a song that has an original songwriter, so we can talk about it. If I had a good singing voice, I could sing it and you wouldn't have any copyright breaches whatsoever or licensing rules. But Run by the River is a song that was written and performed by Ali Gilbert, who works at Nason. So Ali Gilbert music is, if anybody wants to look it up. And the reason that's a very powerful song is not about the lyrics. It's about something about the rhythm of the music, because Ali has found that countless parents contacted him to say for their child, their young person with SEND needs, that it's either proved to be stimulating, soothing, or something that's inspired joy. He's had over 1 million clicks on this online, and parents are telling him that there's something about the tune does it. So I would have to say Run by the River by Ali Gilbert. But there's a second song that he actually wrote to inspire SEND, and the lyrics are all about empowerment and being heard, and it's called Louder, and he sang Louder at our Nason Awards this year in October. And Louder was sung verbally by Ali with music accompaniment, and he was accompanied by a signing choir from Derwent College. So the spirit of inclusion was there, the power of the lyrics, and Ali wrote that for Nason to really to embody the spirit of empowerment. And let's talk about, let's speak about, let's shout louder about Sen.
Oh my goodness. Well, I have to say, we have got a Spotify playlist
Yeah.
for all of the songs that our guests tell us. So we are going to find that very soon. And
Is it on? It is online. It's on YouTube, and Ali's actually here today. And he routinely here will go and talk to. There's one of the other exhibitors that has music equipment. They'll allow him to sing.
oh my goodness, we will have to find Ali, and we need this in our life.
Yeah.
I just love the humanness of that, the fact that it's somebody who works within Nason, who has also been given the freedom to do that, and also the impact it's had on so many people, and then also the fact that you've had it at the Nason Awards and the inclusion and the signing. It's kind of what it should all be about. I think that is amazing.
I mean, we're going to be going away this evening with a lot of books to read and a lot of songs to listen to. The final topic, or the final question, is really about a favourite book of yours. Can be a children's book, can be a book that you've read, can be just a book.
Yeah.
Again, you don't do favourites, but just for today, what do you think might be
I
one?
don't do favourites, but this is probably my favorite. Well, you know, I have a sort of circular, a bit like music, of albums and songs, which I just keep coming back to. You know, if it was a novel, I'd probably say Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier, or maybe 1984 by George. I don't know. There's a whole collection of, or Crime and Punishment, actually. Dostoevsky, I think, might be the greatest novel. But there's a book which I keep coming back to, and it's called The Worst Journey in the World. And it's by Apsley Cherry Garrard, who was a polar explorer, and he was on Scott's infamous, you know, South Pole
Right.
back
Yeah.
in the day, when was it? 1910? I forget the date, actually. The book is about that thick. I mean, it's a tome. We tend to think of the Scott expedition as where he went to the South Pole, and when he got there, Amundsen had already been there and he was beaten to the South Pole. Everyone knows the story of Scott of the Antarctic. But they were there, you know, for 3 years doing science.
Wow.
That's why they were there. And, you know, this book, Cherry Garrard, this book, he was, you know, one of the people on that team. And it's an extraordinary description of a place and a landscape and a time. And if you want to, you know, and it's the opposite of TikTok. You have to read it. And it took me about 10 years to kind of get into it. It takes some, you know, it takes some effort, but the rewards of reading this book are extraordinary because you are there with him. His writing is absolutely beautiful and gripping. And there's a third of the book called The Winter's Journey, and it's the middle third of the book. So you kind of get to this point, and it's this description of, you know, the Natural History Museum in London said, listen, we want you to go off and find a penguin's egg, because we're interested in the sort of development, the embryonic development of penguins. You know, there's this bit of science we're not quite sure about. If we get the egg at this particular time, we'll be able to learn all about this and blah, blah, blah. And so these 3 of them, or 4 of them, I forget how many it was now, went off on this journey to this particular breeding ground where the penguins were in the middle of winter. And it's the most extraordinary description of human suffering you will ever read. I mean, absolutely, you know, they sort of go, they nearly die getting to find the penguin's egg. And then, of course, they've got to bring the penguin's egg back. But things like when they get the egg, you know, they drop one and it breaks, but they've got one left, and they're, you know, it's like -70 and they're wet and they're freezing. They've all got frostbite. Their tent blows away, so they know they're definitely going to die. And then by chance, they get the tent back, and they're trying to make a stove by cooking whale fat but some of the whale fat spits up and takes somebody's eye out, so he loses an eye. You know, and it's the greatest, you know, we maybe talk about the Sistine Chapel ceiling as this kind of high point of human civilization in painting, perhaps, or I don't know, them pick whatever you want. But there are sort of, actually, you know, I mentioned 5 billion years of Earth. Oh, there's human. Okay, so right in that curve of humans of like high achievement is that middle third of The Worst Journey in the World. Anyway, they get back with the egg, and the Natural History Museum, oh, thanks for the egg. Yeah, we don't need it anymore. Yeah, we figured it out. We don't. Anyway, but that's kind of. But I get people to read. I urge people to read this book. It's about what it is to be a human, and what it is to do anything, and why. What's the point of anything? And yeah. That's all. That's all I'll say. I think it's. I don't have any favourites. You know, I mentioned Dostoevsky, which is a great favourite novel. But if I had to, if the aliens came and they said, what's the greatest book ever written? I'd say it's The Worst Journey in the World. There is no book better written than I can think of.
I think you've just given me an
I've
idea.
I've been around a bit. I've read a few books.
I love that.
Thanks for joining us this time on Catching Up with Sarah and Ginny.
Always a pleasure and never a chore.